Hello lovely viewers and welcome to another Yarn with GDevelop tutorial and my first video of 2023. Anyway, in the distant time of 2022, if you can cast your memories back, I played a demo for a game called Gunbrella, which I liked quite a lot, although I was very bad at it. There was a very cool part of the demo where your character speaks to an NPC who's guarding a door, and he asks you for a passphrase, and he gives you a list of 4 words 4 times, so that's 16 words in total. And once you've answered him, he repeats your silly little sentence back to you, which I think are quite funny. And there's another NPC who gives you the correct passphrase, which you can then use to get through the door. But you can guess all you like and make up these silly sentences, which, yeah, I really like that. I probably did that for ages. Anyway, at the time I made a mental note to try and recreate this in Yarn. And I finally got round to doing it at Christmas, and it was quite good fun, quite satisfying doing that. And I thought it might make a nice tutorial as well. And so that's what I will be showing you today. This isn't going to be a step-by-step tutorial. It's not a kind of pixel-by-pixel type tutorial like my first Yarn tutorial was. But I will explain everything, and I will show you everything you need. So you will be able to make the passphrase system with this video. And just a little bit of admin before I continue. This video isn't sponsored by Devolver Digital, and I don't know the developers doinksoft. It's just that I like the game and I thought this dialogue thing was really cool and I wanted to recreate it. You'll need a basic dialogue system set up to be able to take part in this tutorial. If you don't have one, or if you're new to Yarn and or GDevelop, my first video that I ever made will show you step by step from scratch how to create a basic dialogue system. And one other note, we're not going to use a custom pointer this time. If you remember in my first tutorial, we had a Batman symbol that I used to select from the options list, but this time round I'm just going to use a keyboard character instead. The reason for that is that to have a custom pointer for more than 2 options is a little bit tricky, and it requires a few additional events and steps, and I'm not going to be covering that in this video. But I could, if you want me to, I could show you how to use custom pointer with your options lists when you've got more than 2 options. I could do that separately. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on with it. Over in GDevelop, I've got a Gunbrella demake here. It's just one scene and I did some custom graphics just for fun, but it's all about the dialogue system, of course. If we run a preview, when we talk to our NPC, and we get there in a minute. Hello, may I enter the secret club? Shush. Now, what is the passphrase? Now you'll see I have got 3 lists of 3 words here instead of 4 by 4 like in the Gunbrella demo. The reason is just that I wanted to keep it a bit simpler for the purpose of this tutorial, but you absolutely can do as many as you want. You could have 10 lists of 3, you could have 5 lists of 5, you could do what you like, but you'll see a bit later why it gets quite complicated. The more options you have, the more nodes you'll need, and so on. That'll become clearer a bit later on. Anyway, let's just do a silly guess and see what happens. So there you go. So with 3 by 3 lists of 3 words, you've got 27 possible combinations. So you've got 1 correct answer and you've got 26 incorrect answers. And in this example I'm showing you, I have written a unique response for each combination. So you can keep guessing, and the NPC will say something daft. Frog loves cake. The NPC will say something daft or whatever. He will repeat your sentence back to you and then, make whatever comment you like. So I will put the correct answer in now, just so you can see that. So just see that the system does work before you get too excited about this tutorial. You probably want to see that it works. So I'll put the correct passphrase in. And the correct passphrase, dear viewer, I'll let you in on the secret, is frog chops lentils. I almost forgot. There you go. So frog chops lentils is the correct passphrase. You may enter the secret club. So at this point, in your game, you could unlock another scene. You could maybe have an item in your inventory appear, whatever it is you want. At the point he gets the correct answer, you could change a variable somewhere and use that to do all sorts of things in your game. So there you go. So that's my system, and we can even talk to him again and carry on guessing if we want. Dinosaur eats lentils. There we go. It would probably prefer to eat you. There you see. As you can see, I am absolutely hilarious with my writing here. So anyway, let's move on. Let's move on very quickly. Now, before I show you the nodes in Yarn, I'm going to sort of explain to you how this works. I've prepared some slides that I'm going to talk through like a headmaster and explain to you. I'm going to explain to you exactly how it works, the variables you need, the nodes you need, the kind of logic behind the whole thing so that you understand it. After that, I'm going to show you the nodes in Yarn itself. So here we are in my passphrase system here. I'll show you the actual nodes in Yarn in a few moments, but this is just a bit of an explainer so I can talk you through what's actually going on. So in the my little Gunbrella demake that I just showed you, it's an 11 node system that I was using there. And when we talk to the NPC, this node launches, the start node, and he'll say to you, what is the passphrase? And you get your first list. It's just a regular options list in Yarn. If you've done options in Yarn before, it's the same as usual. Based on your response, you get taken to another node. And let's just say we chose frog. We get taken to a node called frog. All the usual kind of Yarn type stuff that you might well be familiar with. But when we arrive at the node, the frog node, a variable called level 1 is created, and it is given the value of frog. It doesn't matter which node you go to here. This variable gets created regardless, and it's all the same variable. You can see this isn't 3 different variables. This is the same variable called level 1, and depending on where you go, it will be created there. But the value it's given will be different depending on what node you go to. So in our case, the value is frog, just a string. It's going to be given to this variable. So then let's say we choose from the next list that appears, we choose eats. So when we arrive at the eats node, another variable, our second variable, is created. It's called level 2 in my case. You can call it whatever you like. I've just thought of these as levels. You've got a level of nodes there and a level of nodes there, but you can call it whatever you like. You could call it fiddlesticks, whatever, if you like. It'll still work. So when you get here, a new variable is created, our second variable called level 2. It's given a value of eats. And then we choose our final option, and we get taken, let's say we choose cake. And you guessed it, a variable. This will be the third variable that gets created, called level 3, and it would get given the value of cake. So at this point, 3 variables have been created, and they've been given each a value that records what we chose. Now, these nodes, I've colored them in gray deliberately because they don't contain an options list, these nodes. They actually don't contain any dialogue at all. All these nodes do is they create the level 3 variable and give it the value that you've chosen, and then they link to a node called finish. So the player won't be aware of this at all. When they make their final choice at this level, they will get taken to the finish node. They won't see anything happening on this sort of level of nodes because there's no actual dialogue there. And again, I'll show you the actual nodes in Yarn in a minute as an extra way of sort of helping you to understand. When you get to the finish node, an if statement will check if you got the right answer. And basically, the if statement will ask, is level 1 frog and level 2 chops and level 3 lentils? If that's true, then you you got the right passphrase, you may go into the secret club. And then any of the other 26 responses are going to be wrong. And at this point, you can make a decision. You could simply have an else statement that says, else you got it wrong, go away. Or you can use 26 else if statements and give the player a unique response for every single possible combination, which is what I did because I'm a bit bonkers, and also it was really good fun. Being able to repeat the phrase back to the player that they chose and then give them a little cheeky response was quite good fun. But you can, as I say, you can do a simple you got it right, you got it wrong, which is an easy way to type it out. It doesn't take very long. Or you can go for the longer option of 27 in total responses, 1 correct and 26 incorrect. Back over in GDevelop, let's go and have a look at our dialog. Here we go, edit in Yarn. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see better. I've also enabled snap to grid in the settings here, which I found really helpful laying this out because, as you would expect, things snap to a grid, which is quite helpful for layouts like this. So I'll zoom in and I'll go over again how it works. So we get our first list here. And anyone who's familiar with Yarn and options will recognize this kind of thing. The word on the left is what the player will see, and the word on the right is the node that you get taken to when you make that choice. Let's say that we choose frog. So we get taken to the frog node. When we arrive at the frog node, a variable is created and it's given the value of frog. It's a string, so it's in quote marks. This is the syntax for creating a variable in Yarn. So it doesn't matter which of these three we go to. This variable is the same one, is created, and it's given a value. And then we make our choice in these lists. You'll notice that these lists are all the same. These three lists are the same. These three lists are the same. So we've arrived at frog, and this variable has been created and given a value of frog. We then choose loves. So off we go to the loves node. At this node, a variable called level 2 is created, and it's set to loves, a string there. And again, that's the same variable is created no matter which of these three you go to, but it's given a different value. So finally, we make another choice. We choose lentils. So off we go to the lentils node, and our final variable is created. It's called level 3. Again, you can call it whatever you like. You can name your variables however you like, but it should be the same on all three of these. It's given a value of lentils, and then this is a link, which takes us to the finish node. Now, there's no dialogue in these three, so the player won't even be aware of these nodes. When they choose pizza, the next thing they know, they will see dialogue that's coming from the finish node here. So what happens in the finish node? Well, we've got three variables that exist now, and each one of them has been given a value. So our finish node does stuff with those variables. Now let me just make it a little less scary by getting rid of that for a second. So what happens when we get to the finish node? An if statement asks a question. Basically, it says, is level 1 frog and level 2 chops and level 3 lentils? If that's true, this line of dialogue will be shown, and anything afterwards will happen as well. So, you've got the correct passphrase. Well done. So if you've looked at my other tutorials, I did a tutorial about variables, and you'll probably be familiar with simpler if statements like that just tests one thing. Is the value of this variable frog? Do this. But in our case, we're using and to add additional conditions. Well, I suppose this is a condition. The whole thing is a condition, but it's made up of more than one. I'm trying to think of another word for condition. But anyway, all these things need to be true for this to evaluate to true. And then it will deliver this dialogue. And then the face pick changes and we get the cheers mate from the Gunbrella man. And you could, if you wanted to, you could do an else here. You got it wrong. And then you can end your if statement. You could do it as simply as that if you wanted. It's going to check for the correct answer. If it doesn't have the correct answer, this else will pick up any kind of other possibility. All the other 26 possibilities will be picked up by that. But in my case, I am not doing it as simply as that because I wanted a unique response for each combination. So here we are. We have a series of else if statements. This is the first one. 26 else if statements. They cover all the other possibilities. So if you chose frog loves lentils, which is the wrong response, you get this. And if you chose frog loves cake, you get this. And when you've been given your line of dialogue telling you that you were right, telling you that you were wrong, or telling you that you were right, the statement, the interaction ends afterwards, and you exit the dialogue at that point. So, as I say, I did a video dedicated to stuff about variables, and I looked at if statements and stuff like that. So, if you're interested in getting into that more, it might be worth looking at the video dedicated to that. So that's it. That's how it works. We have 27 possibilities covered by this statement, or these statements, should I say. I'll also just quickly show you. I've got no else if. There we go. This is what I was just talking about, really, when I just typed it in as I was talking. But this is a simpler way of doing it. Here we go. So you could just have a check for the correct answer that says, well done, you got the correct answer. And then you can have an else that picks up everything else. It's a bit boring, though, isn't it, really? If you say cat loves cake and somebody just said it's wrong, it's a bit boring. but the point is you can do it much more simply like this if you want to. Now, you might be wondering whether there's a more dynamic way of taking care of all the responses instead of manually typing lots of else ifs. Well, in theory, there is. In theory, we could use inline statements to create a sentence like this. So no matter what the player says, they're going to get the sentence they said back to them dynamically, and then the second part of the sentence would always be the same. I think if you look at the Gunbrella footage, I think he always says something like, you don't know Bob, go away, after he's told you your sentence back to you. And that seems to be, well, it's a dynamically sort of created sentence based on what you said. And that would be a much easier if statement. You'd have an if you get the right answer, say this. If you don't get the right answer, use this nice dynamic way of creating a sentence. But unfortunately, this would be how you type it into Yarn if it worked. But unfortunately, inline expressions, which is what these are, do not work in Yarn with GDevelop. It's nothing to do with GDevelop. It's not a bug in GDevelop. It's something to do with Yarn and one of the libraries it uses. I don't understand. I'm not a developer of Yarn or GDevelop. I found a bug report about it, and it didn't make a great deal of sense to me. But something to do with Bojangles or something. I don't know. But anyway, that doesn't really matter as far as you and me are concerned, who are using Yarn and GDevelop. Inline expressions do not work. So this lovely shorthand way of making a sentence is not something we can take advantage of. But, on the plus side, creating all these else if statements gives us the opportunity to create unique sentences for each possible response. And you'll have seen in my earlier footage that I had quite a bit of fun with that, making a silly comment based on all sorts of combinations that the player might have. So there is a plus side to this. It's a bigger writing task for sure, but it does give you the opportunity to make a game where every time the player tries a guess, they're going to get a new and silly sentence, which I think adds, can add sort of a lot of value to your game, all these little surprises in your game that make it more fun, these little discoveries. So anyway, too long didn't read would be that yes, in theory, there should be a nice, easy way of taking care of guesses, of responses to guesses, but inline expressions do not work in Yarn with GDevelop. Now here is a simpler layout version. It uses only 8 nodes instead of 11. The downside to this one is you can't give the user, the player, a unique response based on what they say. You can just do you got it right, you got it wrong. But, it might be useful to you if you want a simpler approach. How this works is it's simpler than the other one, but we start the same way. We have a list of 3 things: frog, cat, and dinosaur. If you've decided that maybe this time you've decided that cat is the right answer, you will get taken to this node called correct 1. And a variable is created there, just like before, but it's a true or false variable now. It's a Boolean. It's level 1 is created, the variable with the name level 1 is created, and it's set to true. If you chose frog or dinosaur, they both take you to wrong, this node called wrong 1. And at that point, the same variable is created, whichever one you go to, and it's given a value of false instead. And at that point, once you get the first one wrong, you can never get the phrase right again, which is, of course, the case with the first one. You need all 3 words to be correct to get the answer validated as correct. So once you choose frog or dinosaur and you come over here, you can never now get the phrase right. So what happens here is a bit of a trick, really, on the player, because although they get to choose from 3 things, they're all 3 take you to this. But the player won't know that. And it's the same here as well. Even if they choose the correct thing here, they're not going to be taken over here again. They're going to be taken to wrong 2. And again here, there are 3 options here, but no matter what they choose, they're taken to wrong 3 and ultimately here. They never get to cross over to the correct one. Because if you think about it, they don't need to. If they choose the wrong one to start with, well, then the phrase is never going to be right, is it? So they're on this wrong track, I call it. But if they choose the correct first answer and then the wrong second answer, they get chucked over to the wrong track. So you see, with the correct side of things, at each stage, they can either carry on to more correct or they can get kicked over to wrong. So it's as simple as that, really. When you get to this finish here, you will have 3 variables, just like before. They're all called the same thing, but this time they're Booleans. And if all 3 are true, so the if statement will be if level 1 is true and level 2 is true and level 3 is true, you got the right passphrase. Else, you've got the wrong passphrase. Anything else is just wrong. So now I will show you the nodes in GDevelop. So here we are back in Yarn in GDevelop, and you will see the layout that I've just been showing you, exactly the same. And if we zoom in, I can show you a little bit more about how it works. So you see in this case, you've got the options list here: frog, cat, dinosaur. Frog is the correct answer, so we take the player to correct 1, a node called correct 1. Dinosaur and cat, they both take you to wrong 1. Okay, so let's say that we got the right answer on the first line. This variable, level 1, is created and it's set to true. So remember, that's not the word true. This is a Boolean variable this time. It doesn't have a string. We're giving it a true or a false. So level 1 is true because they got the right answer. If they chose cat or dinosaur, that variable will be created just the same, but it will be given a value of false. Now you'll notice here, like I was saying before, if they get the first one wrong, their second list will take them to the next wrong node, no matter what they choose. Let's say they guess the wrong, they guess cat the first time, but they guess the right word on the second time. Well, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it would still, at the end, the if statement is going to say you got it wrong. So it doesn't matter. So if you get the first one wrong, you stay on this wrong track all the way through. So in other words, once you get to here, although you're going to get these lists given to you, it won't make a difference what you say in them. I know that sounds a little bit sneaky, doesn't it? But hopefully the logic makes sense to you. We are trying to give the player a you got it right or you got it wrong. And this is a way of doing that. If we want to do something a bit more dynamic and say you chose this, what a silly sentence you made, then we need the 11 node system. So anyway, on the right side, let's say we made the right choice first. We got frog, great. But then we made a wrong choice on the second one. We chose eats. You get chucked over into the wrong track, which then will funnel you through here. Doesn't matter what you pick then, you're wrong. So hopefully that makes sense. It sounds a bit harsh, doesn't it? Like I'm marking somebody's papers or something. You're wrong, you're wrong. But hopefully the logic of this makes sense to you. So when we get to our if statement at the end, we've got 3 variables. We've got level 1, level 2, and level 3. And hopefully all of them have a value of true. If they do, we get this. You got the correct passphrase. Actually, I'll show you this working because, I'll show you this working just to show that I'm not talking nonsense. So this is the 8 node system is what we're using at the moment. So if we talk to our guy here, we'll give him the correct answer first. We'll go frog. So frog is true. Chops is set to true. Lentils is set to true. You got the correct passphrase. Okie dokie, thanks. So let's do it wrong. Let's choose, well, anything wrong really. We'll choose cat eats cake. That is the wrong answer because cat eats cake. All 3 of those would have the value of false, but it doesn't matter. Even if it does anything apart from our correct answer is gonna evaluate to false. So here you go. Very simple. If that's true, say this. Else, in other words, everything else, that's the wrong answer. So there you go. That's my 8 node system. It might be what you're looking for, but I definitely prefer the 11 node. I think it's really nice being able to give the player unique responses for everything they might say. And that's the end of another yarn tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I had loads of fun making this one. I'm such a graphics geek. I love doing all those demake graphics. I've never done anything like that before. I was thinking of using the Frodo and Trevor graphics that I've used in my other videos, but I thought, nah, it's time for a bit of a change. And I really enjoyed doing the special themed graphics and doing the passphrase system as well. I was scribbling notes and drawing diagrams, and it did take me a little bit of time to figure it all out. There was one point I had a 40 node system and I thought, oh dear, I need this horrible looking horrendous 40 node system to make this happen. And then I just had this light bulb moment where I thought, no you don't, Jason, you fool. You only need 11 nodes. When you get stuck on something and you just can't see the solution, and then all of a sudden while you're watching the TV and eating cake, the solution just suddenly gets beamed into your head from somewhere, and you're just reaching for your notepad and scribbling diagrams down. Anyway, that's my long-winded way of saying I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I've got some ideas for other tutorials to do in 2023, but my next video will probably be a devlog, I think. Anyway, I will leave you for now. Thanks very much for watching, and good day to you.